Hello, everybody. This is Deb from Just Do Something Homestead. And what started as a simple project of putting away a few jars from the items I've been purchasing lately, it's turned into a massive weekend marathon. A lot of my followers tell me they just don't have time to preserve food. And in my book, I don't have time not to preserve food. It's like everything is fast forward, speeding along, and if we don't do something, I think we're going to be in a crisis pretty soon. And you can go along and say, well, I think a lot of that's just conspiracy. I don't think all these things are really happening. Well, you can go forward with that train of thought. But for me, all it takes is going to the grocery store. Go in the store, look what is happening to those prices. Look how packaging is getting smaller, prices are getting larger, and the shelves are starting to have some bare spots again. That alone should encourage you to start preserving your food. I teach school full time, so my days are pretty limited during the week, and what I look forward to is the weekend to do a lot of things outside. Well, this weekend, it was raining, and I mean pouring. So I was kind of forced to stay inside and tackle some of the things that have been piling up. And the biggest thing that was piling up was the food I had purchased and not had time to put away. And that brought me to Saturday morning, where I thought, well, I'll just seal a few of these jars. And before I knew it, it turned into this big project. And I'm feeling pretty good about this. I was able to get a lot done, but I'm pretty tired. So let's back up 2 days and let me show you where this all started. With my goal of trying to only serve my family healthy and safe foods, I have been purchasing any and all organic foods that I can find on sale, on clearance, or in stores for the last 2 weeks. Today, I am going to show you how I preserve all of these foods. Most of what you're seeing on this side of my table are ingredients. They are ingredients for the boxed and canned items that I am now going to come up with my own homemade recipe for. I've looked at every item and determined the best way to preserve it. Most of these items I am going to be vacuum sealing, and so I've started washing my half-gallon jars, and I'm having them here to make sure they are completely dry. The first thing that I'm going to vacuum seal is my all-purpose flour, and I have simplified things over the years. First off, I do put it in jars. And a lot of people say, oh, 20 pounds of flour, just put it into a plastic container and put some bay leaves in there. And you know what? It just doesn't always work. I am very much a visual learner, and what happens to me, if I don't see it, I forget it's there. And so yes, I may put 5 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds of flour into a plastic container, but then I forget because all I've done is put that container in the bottom row and out of sight, out of mind. Instead, I use my half-gallon canning jars, and it is so much easier. I put them on my shelf in my pantry. I can count, oh, I have 10 jars. Okay, I'm doing well. I'm down to 5. I better get some more. To vacuum seal, you're going to need a few things. The first is a vacuum sealer. I have done videos on all different kinds, from handheld to canister ones to this one right here. This is and will remain my favorite. It is over 10 years old. I have never had a problem with it. One time it was a little noisy, but that was it. And the next time it was fine. But this is powerful. When I've used the handheld ones, I would often find out that the seals had popped on those jars, and that is a waste of my time. So for me, I'm going to get something that's powerful to work the first time. You're also going to need some flats, is what I call them, but these are canning jar lids. These are wide mouth because I'm using the bigger jars. You can also use regular mouth on smaller jars. You need the attachments. These do not come. It's called right on there. It says the jar sealer. This was a separate purchase that I made on Amazon, and I got both the large one and the regular mouth. A few other little things. You're going to need a marker to write on the lid so you know when the best by date is. You're going to need lots of jars in various sizes. I stick with these when I'm doing things like flour, but I use my quart size often. I even use teeny tiny ones for herbs. I like my wide mouth funnel. Paper towels, we'll talk about that in a minute. And of course, whatever it is that you are going to vacuum seal. Truly, it does not get much easier than this. The first thing I'm going to do is fill my jar with flour. And here's my first tip. I have filled this. It's actually way up to the very top, but there is a lot of air in that container. So the very first thing I do is start wobbling it back and forth. And I'm going to bang this on my counter, move it back and forth, and I'll show you what happens. Look at all that space. That was from just moving that jar back and forth on my countertop. We have gained probably 4 inches. So now I'm going to refill it and do this a few more times until it is all settled in. I have rocked it back and forth 3 times, and I think we are finally completely filled and not able to get any more in there. Next thing I'm going to do is wipe off the top. I just do that with my hand. My hands are clean. I wash them constantly. And that reminds me, when I'm doing any vacuum sealing, I have washed and dried all of my equipment, including the jars first. The next step is to use a paper towel. Now, these are the skinny ones that you pull off, and I have cut each one in half. So in other words, it was one long one, and I cut it down the middle. Now, in the past, I would trace something, cut it all out nice and neat. I don't have time for that anymore, so I am going to use 1/2 of that paper towel sheet. And what I am doing is creating a barrier between the powdered item, which in this case is flour, and my lid, because what will happen if you don't do this, it sucks the flour out of the jar into your vacuum sealer, and ultimately it will ruin it. So what I've done, I just push it on down, and then I'm going to fold over those sides, and that's it. That creates the barrier. All right, again, wipe it off, and then I'm going to put my lid on top. I find it much easier to write on my lid with a Sharpie before I seal my jar. So this one is organic flour. BB means Best Buy. And the Best Buy date on my flour was 2024. I always add at least 1 year with flour. I try to stick with 1 year in advance. And it is going to seal, and it will be fine. You may be able to get it till 2026, 2027. I've heard of people getting it much longer than that, but I write on the lid, and then I can determine if I want to hold it longer or not. I just place that on top of my jar, making sure the paper towel is not hanging over the lip at all. And then I'm going to put this jar sealer on top. There, and push it down till it is on there solid. Whichever food saver that you purchase, make sure that it has the adapters on there to vacuum seal. Without this, you're not going to be able to do that. Some simply vacuum seal bags and nothing more. But I purchased this one. It was less than $200 when I bought it because of the port system that was on it. And so I'm going to take that and plug it right into the top of my jar. This sealer will shut off when all the air is removed. So I turn it on and I push accessory, and it's going to be kind of loud, so I'll only run it for part of it. All right, and it shut off all by itself. There, did you hear that release of air? That's a good sign. And then you're going to take off the jar sealer. You always check the seal, and I do that in a couple ways. I first push on the center and make sure that that little bubble, the center of it, is down, and this one is. Then I try to pull off the lid. I do that with my fingers. And lastly, I give it a good yank, shake it around. That is on there solid, so I know this jar is sealed. Next, you put a ring on it, and that is the opposite of your canned goods. Canned goods do not get stored with rings. Vacuum sealed, you always want to have that ring on there. And I like it because it keeps the 5 gazillion rings that I have in this house on the jars and out of the way. I'm going to continue to vacuum seal all of my flour. I have 20 pounds, and I'm going to show you how many jars that comes to. People often ask me if I need to put a bay leaf in here or an oxygen absorber, and the answer is no. What you're doing is you are sucking out all the air, and if there were any critters in this flour at all, they couldn't breathe, so they're not going to be able to survive. If you want, you can always throw it into the freezer first, but there really is no need. I have never found any insects in any of the flour. 20 pounds of flour went into 7 half-gallon jars, so each jar is a little less than 3 pounds. I just finished sealing the organic cocoa powder. And that was a 5-pound bag, and it actually made 3 half-gallons and then 1 little pint. So that was quite a bit from there. And the only difference that I did on this It was such a fine powder that I put 2 paper towels in between as a barrier. Didn't stop it at all, worked just fine. Any idea why sugar gets hard and clumps together? It's moisture. Keep the moisture away from your sugar and it will not get hard. Vacuum sealing is a wonderful way to preserve all your sugar. This is a 10-pound bag of organic cane sugar, and so I'm going to see how many jars it goes into. You're going to want to put a barrier just like the flour and cocoa. All right, all of that sugar filled 4 half-gallon containers. Next, I have 2 bags of baking powder, and these are 14 ounces each. I've actually started the first one. When I do items like baking powder where you just barely use a little, maybe a half teaspoon, a teaspoon, I like to use small jars. And so these are 1/2 pint jars. That way it just seems like the rest can be sealed and you can keep one in your kitchen. And since we're still working with powdered items, you're going to have to put that barrier in between. I was able to get 4.5 pints of baking powder. I'll just show you something real quick. This is the peanut butter that I buy from Aldi. And as you notice, it has a bright green lid. I save those lids. And the reason I do that, they fit regular mouth canning jars. And so this was a little bit of rice that I had left over. Not enough that I want to seal because I'm just going to put it in my cupboard. So that peanut butter lid fits perfect. As far as vacuum sealing cereal, what I do is I buy a variety of organic cereals and then I mix them together in a super big bowl and I vacuum seal them. All of that cereal broke down into 12 half-gallon jars. And this brings me to Sunday night. What started as just a thought of vacuum sealing for a couple hours turned into an all-week marathon. But let's take a quick look at what I accomplished. That is all the flour and the cocoa, baking powder, baking soda, cocoa butter. All right, I was also able to vacuum seal some quick oats. There's the sugar, lots of ingredients. So whether I have some pasta or some shells and cheese, all those convenience foods, and then snacks, lots and lots of snacks from graham crackers to granola mix. And lastly, I vacuum sealed all that cereal. Now, what I have left are items that I preserved but not by vacuum sealing. I have 2 latch boxes, and latch boxes I use in my freezer. So this is organic pasta and shells or mac and cheese, whatever you want to call it. I actually enjoy these. I grew up on Kraft macaroni and cheese. And yes, I make homemade. And yes, I love homemade. But I also love Annie's. Now, we are blessed to have a chest freezer, so anytime I have something that's bulky, something that would be difficult to vacuum seal, I put them in a latch box and I put that directly into my freezer. The next item that I am freezing is organic ice cream cones, and honestly, I considered taking them out of the box, but the box protects them from getting crushed. So then I thought, well, how else could I preserve these? And just like my Annie's mac and cheese, I just put them into a latch box and I'm going to freeze the entire container. If you watched my video on what foods you can freeze that you didn't think you could freeze, you know that I like to put my pasta and again, the smaller latch box. And I do that, first off, it fits perfect. But the main reason, I tried vacuum sealing spaghetti and I had to break it all in half and they would fall all over the place, make a big old mess. And I thought there's got to be a better way. So when I tried this, I found out it worked perfect. When I'm making spaghetti, linguine, I just go out to the freezer, grab the box, cook what I want, put the box back, and they will stay preserved. And then my very last ingredients were things that simply are shelf stable. So whether it's honey, peanut butter, pesto, olive oil, all these things go directly into my pantry on a shelf. And I don't need to do anything special. Another question that a lot of my subscribers ask is, how in the world do you store this? It's too big. I don't have a pantry. I don't have a place to put all that. Until we moved into this house last year, I did not have a huge pantry either. I had a very tiny one that only held a few items. What I did back then is I kept all of these boxes. In fact, I have a ton of these boxes because they are perfect for storing filled vacuum sealed containers. And just like that, I have 6 half-gallon jars that are all filled, sealed, and ready to store. But where can I put this? All you have to do is look for little places in the house that you can store them, such as under a bed, in a bathtub you never use. How about a closet? One thing you don't want to do is stack them. So that's why I like to use these boxes, and then that way I can just have them one level. 3 places to avoid: don't store them in a hot attic, in a hot garage, or outside in very cold temperatures like a shed. And honestly, I don't have room for these items in my kitchen. There's no way they would fit in my kitchen. So I have shelves. I started with plastic ones from Walmart, and slowly I find them at thrift shops and on clearance and people throwing them out. So look for shelves that are sturdy to hold all your supplies. And what type of place should you store them in? You want them in a dry, cool location. If you have a basement that is not too damp, that is a perfect place to put them. I said not too damp because if it's literally sitting water, your lids can rust. So you don't want it where it's in water. I hope this video was an encouragement to you. Remember, you can't do everything, but you can just do something. Maybe you just determined that you're going to buy organic flour, and now you know how to store it. If this video was helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Have a blessed day, everybody, and keep storing food. Bye-bye.